You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 144. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Hi all, and welcome back to the podcast. So now we are in September already. Yes, we're in the months, but the sun is still shining and I am still keeping the summer vibes going. All right, today we're going to talk about the question, do you allow yourself to have any wine? All right, so I talk a lot about how drinking less will change your life, and in so many ways. Certainly the ways that you can already imagine, but there will be countless others that you probably haven't even thought yet. You'll find yourself just not thinking about drinking. Right? It just won't occur to you, just won't be a thought you'll have so often. It's a bit like how I remember feeling when I'd finished the exams I was at when I was at school, right? I'd spent what felt like so long revising for those exams, and every spare moment was used for German vocab or maths formulae or whatever. And then all my time was spent on that. And then when I'd finally sat the exams, afterwards, I still had the thoughts about needing to revise. I think, well, what are you going to do next? What are you going to revise now? Before I had to realize I didn't need to do that anymore, right? As the exams were now behind me, revising had become a very practiced, in fact, my most practiced behavior. And it just took me some time to change how I was spending my time. It took some time for my brain to catch up with the new thoughts, right? We're not doing that. We can actually go out and do this fun stuff now instead of doing this revision stuff. And for the longest time, I felt the same sort of way with my reality, with my brain not having yet caught up with what was now my life, right? It's kind of like I would do a double take, that I wasn't thinking about the wine so much and I didn't need to spend so much time planning my life around it. I would still occasionally have the automatic thought, hey, Anna, you need to check. Is there going to be enough, wine this evening? You need to go out maybe before the shops are going to shut. Before I realised, actually, I don't need to think about that anymore. And it's no problem either. It's no problem that I was still maybe occasionally thinking that. It's just a holdover from when that was my most practiced behaviour. Right, so just like when revising was my most practiced behavior, and my brain would say, what are you going to work on next? So in these times, we're able to just say, oh yeah, that was my old thought. Weird that I should still think that from time to time. And then I could just get on with whatever I was doing. I wouldn't make it mean anything about me. So then what I found happens is that you're changing your relationship with alcohol, and then other people, they start to get used to it and they start to notice it, and they start to, be thinking, they might want to know a little bit more. Be prepared for that. I always say other people, they're going to be interested, even though why, but they just are. And maybe they're going to be a bit inquisitive. And one of the questions I would get asked quite a bit is, but do you allow yourself to have any wine? Right? Do you ever allow yourself, Anna? And you might worry about that and what that means. So I thought that would be a good topic to cover today. And also I would say that this is a question I get asked by my clients in the early days of starting out on the work. And that's a totally natural thing. There's nothing wrong with it, right? They might say, so Anna, do you ever allow yourself to have wine? But the first thing I want to say is, if that's what you're thinking, if that's what you're wondering happens after you do change your relationship with alcohol, I think the way you ask the question is telling, right? Because it presumes that drinking wine is something, or beer or whatever, is something that you would really want to do and that you would really need to allow yourself to do, because otherwise you'd be drinking your head off. So you either hold yourself back and restrict yourself, or you allow yourself, right? It's kind of like two sides of the same coin. It's stop or start, which, by the way, is another way of the all or nothing, the way the all or nothing thinking shows up. But that isn't how it needs to be. Here's how it actually is. If I want a sip of someone's drink, I may have a taste, and if I do, it's because I genuinely want to taste, right? But that is totally different to how I used to drink. There is now no compulsion around it. These days, it's very, very, very neutral. There's no emotion or energetic feeling behind it. In fact, these days, it delights me so much more to not have the drink, which, by the way, is kind of wild when I think about where I was. So I find it so interesting that we get asked, and you might ask yourself, as I used to, about this concept of allowing yourself to drink. And we don't think there's anything weird about this question. In fact, we kind of agree with it. We don't challenge the weirdness and why we're being asked in the first place. But let's talk about carrots and kale for a moment. If I were to ask you, have you allowed yourself to have some carrots today? It's kind of like a weird question, right? You'd kind of do a double take and look at me. What's wrong with her? And if someone said to you, look, I'm going to eat carrots in front of you, what would you say? Kind of like knock yourself out. I mean, really, you wouldn't think twice about it. But when it comes to wine, we kind of imagine it's like we need to wear some reins, like those ones you see people put on toddlers, right, to keep them from wandering off and to keep them focused. So no wonder we think it comes down to this idea of allowing ourselves. Now, I want to segue for a little and talk about not making your desire to reduce your desire to drink into a quest, right? Now, because it's very much related to this idea of allowing yourself to drink or not. So I talk a lot about desire and changing our desire and how this is the key to changing your relationship with alcohol. Because if you don't want something, if you don't desire something, it's easy to not consume that thing. And this works for anything in life, from white wine to ice cream to buying a dress to going on a trip to going to a party, to anything, right? But as I work with highly functioning high achievers, this in itself can turn into a bit of a quest or a mission. People tell me they completely agree with my approach and they absolutely want to have no desire or very little desire for wine. And I think that's great. But then they go on to say that they're on a mission to not have the desire. And again, this sounds really positive, right? It sounds like you're determined and focused and motivated and all those good things. But again, I would ask, why on a mission? You aren't on a mission to not eat carrots. You're not saying I've got 100 days without eating kale, right? We don't say those things because kale and carrots are irrelevant to our lives. I mean, how often do you think about kale or carrots or something equivalent? Right? Probably never, until it's time to cook dinner. It takes up no brain space. Right? And especially for me, kale. I mean, really, unless it's cooked, I like it cooked crunchy, but otherwise, I just would never, ever think about it. But there are people who love kale and who have it. So it's not necessary to make it a mission to reduce your desire. It will happen naturally without putting yourself any undue pressure. Right? So I want you to stop. If you're thinking about making it a mission, you can drop that talk and instead just focus on doing the work and knowing that the results will come. Because if we're not thinking so much about it, we won't be taking the action of drinking so much. Now, something else that gets wrapped up in this is confusing wanting to preserve the right to drink with the right to want alcohol. Now, I realize I spent so much time preserving my right to want alcohol because otherwise what you hear is things like, well, you're an alcoholic. Right? And I knew I wasn't. So I was like, okay, F you, I'm going to drink if I want to drink, right? We kind of rebel. I'm going to preserve my desire to drink if I feel like it. Yes, I used to be quite the one who would react against myself when I felt I was being told to do something. But then I asked, why was it so important to me to have the right to drink? And to state the right to drink and to rebel against all my plans and anything if I felt that someone was taking that right to drink away from me. Why did I need to prove this, especially to other people? Because of course I have that right already, because I'm in control of me. But why did I want to fight for that right so much? And if that's you, if you really I just really want to, I'm going to show the world, right? I really want to have this right. What if you could instead ask yourself, if I could take away my desire to drink, would I want that? Why or why not? Listen, I don't want to tell you shouldn't want to drink, because then you're going to rebel. But I want you to be open to the possibility that you could feel about wine the way you feel about kale or carrots, or whatever your equivalent is. And that it's just not relevant in your life. I want you to imagine going out to dinner with your husband or wife and not sharing wine and having it be as good a night as ever, right? And we don't really tend to go there because we think wine is the thing that makes things better. We make that assumption. We believe it, and it's also because it's what we're told. And also because we actually don't look at what else is possible. We don't question it. So I want you to question it. I want you to question your new future reality as it not ever being a case of you allowing yourself to have wine, right? Because you'll have dispensed with the reins. If you want to have some wine, you can choose to do that. But it's not a case of allowing or not allowing yourself. Then how different would your life be if that were the case? But instead of asking these questions, what we tend to do is we tend to fight ourselves. Here's what I see is that you might say, well, when I don't drink, I feel better and free. That's what you might say. But then you think about what that means, all right, what you're saying. You're talking about not drinking. And then you push against the idea of that, even though you feel better when you're not doing it so much. And the way to counteract that is just to be really clear on your reason why you want to drink in the whole and also in each specific situation. Your reason to drink, especially if you have some negative consequences when you do drink, has to be such a good reason that you're willing to continue to make a conscious effort around it. If you want to carry on drinking, you're going to need to be very conscious and deliberate about it for as long as that is the case, right? You're going to need to manage your cravings and plan drinks and stay aware and do all those things. And that doesn't have to be a big effort if the payoff is the reward that you want. For instance, I know someone who loves wine tasting. For him, it's worth it. It's worth it for him to use his brain energy because then he gets to enjoy the wine, right? And in control and just fully enjoying his whole experience. So your reason really has to be compelling enough to be willing to do that work. But whether you still have a drink from time to time or whether you decide you just want to cut it out of your life, it won't be a case of you allowing yourself to drink or not allowing yourself to drink. You will be choosing, and that's an altogether better place to be. Now, if you're following along doing the work, I want to make sure you have a copy of my free guide on how to deal with cravings. If you haven't got yours yet, go to 90dayslater.co/3, as in the number 3 things, or one word, 3 things, and download yours today. And if you want to change, but you don't think you can do this on your own, I can help. It is what I do. It's what I spend my days helping people with. I am here. I work one-on-one with people. I customize my curriculum for you. I offer a judgment-free, shame-free space to explore why you drink and to help you create the relationship with alcohol that is right for you, however that looks. Go to 90dayslater.co and book some time to chat with me. You can do that through book a call at the top of the page. The call is free and there's no strings attached. I only work with people who really want to do so. So there will be no pressure. But you will leave the call knowing what will be required for you to get what you want for your relationship with alcohol. Okay, that's everything for this week. Please do rate and review this podcast and share it with someone you love. This helps the podcast become more discoverable by more people. And in the meantime, I hope you have a great week and I'll see you next time. If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around and they don't miss out on life. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.